this story is both Canadian and American. It's more politics, so I'm hoping that you guys are not sick of eating politics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, every week. But this story is about the Trump tariffs, right? Which is obviously top of mind for this campaign that's happening right now in Canada, where Trump, after he's been flip flopping back and forth about when to implement tariffs on what to implement tariffs on, and it's been on and again and off again. And recently, he just signed another executive order that will impose 25% tariffs on cars not made in the U.S. And apparently, this is ready to go and is supposed to come into effect on April 3rd. So this has definitely sent shockwaves in Canadian politics once again, because car parts are one of the biggest export items that we manufacture here in Canada and then export to the United States. And even though we don't have wholly owned Canadian auto companies, we do a lot of business with companies like GM and Ford, which Magna. Funny enough, I used to live in Aurora, which was where Magna is based out of. And Magna is one of the, I think is one of the world's biggest car part manufacturing companies. And they're based here in Ontario. So, there's a lot of implications as to what 25% tariffs on cars and car parts will mean for Canadians. And Canadians are kind of directing their anger at Trump, obviously, and I guess that is logical, but they're also directing their anger towards Elon Musk, who's seen as one of the biggest Trump supporters. And recently, there's been a contract that was signed between Westjet, which is a Canadian airline company, and Starlink, which the contract was supposed to let Starlink provide in-flight internet on WestJet flights. But then there's a bunch of angry liberals who are calling on WestJet to cancel this contract because apparently Starlink is the devil, because Elon is the devil, and all this stuff. So I just kind of want to get your opinions on two things, right? So number one is the tariffs that on car parts, and do you think that there's how much impact do you think this is gonna be on Canada, and how long do you think this is going to be in effect? Because Trump is saying that these tariffs are permanent, we're gonna put it on, and then we're gonna reshore all these car companies and make cars right at home. But another kind of group of analysts are saying that listen, this is just a negotiating tactics. There's so much manufacturing that can't be onshored, so eventually Trump's going to have to drop these tariffs. So where do you stand on that? Do you think Trump is serious about having these tariffs on kind of forever? Or is he gonna kind of relent at some point and then we're gonna strike a deal? Or what's your opinion on that in general? And then number two, on the Starlink thing, do you think is justified? Should we cancel Starlink, and should we just ban them from WestJet or ban them from Canada as a whole? And why is the anger being directed at Elon, right? Because I know Elon's a big Trump supporter, but is that the only reason, right? Because there's a lot of other rich billionaires that are Trump supporters, but it seems like Elon's getting an especially big portion of the kind of hate, especially from Canadians, just for supporting Trump. But I don't know if there's any specific thing that Elon is doing that pissed off Canadians besides supporting Trump, or is that the only thing? Or do you think this whole push against Starlink and Tesla and Elon in general is justified, or what's going on here? So kind of a two-part story, if you guys, either one of you, want to take it away.
Sure. I think that on the tariff thing, I guess the way I want to look at it is that like I don't want to just get emotional about it and do like the whole TDS Trump derangement syndrome thing because I think that's kind of what our politicians are doing, and I just don't think I know it makes everybody feel better and they get their emotions out and they get to show Canadians that they're fighting for them and all that stuff, but for the most part it's purely performative. I think that what Doug Ford did today was a purely performative act. Uh, I'm not saying that Canada doesn't have a reason to be pissed off. That's not my argument here. Um, like, first of all, everybody, including Doug Ford and like Polyev and even Carney, said like they're not even sure if Trump's just like if he's going to pull out of this in 2 days or what. So I think we're like entering this phase of Trump's like move on tariffs where like we're starting to get diminishing marginal returns. Like I think that what Trump did get a lot. I think okay, there's elements of this where like we've discussed where I do believe that Trump wants to get concessions from other countries. I do believe America does have an asymmetric trading relationship with a lot of countries, which they have used as like a power play, as a way to get what they want geopolitically often. But I think that the problem with asymmetric like trade deficits is that even like in economic theory, it's like theorized if trade is set up like properly, trade deficits are supposed to kind of resolve themselves over time. They're not supposed to be permanent. And when trade deficits are permanent, as they are for a lot of for the U.S. and a lot of the countries that they import goods for, I think the main issue I have with that is that uh, like the United States the U.S. workers can only keep their jobs and can prevent themselves from being hollowed out if they're significantly more productive than their counterparts in, let's say, a country like Germany or Canada that also produces cars. Now, the truth is, America is more productive than most of the countries that they're trading with, which is why they're able to like maintain asymmetric trading relationships just for 70 years. Like if Canada tried to maintain asymmetric trading relationships for 70 years, we would have gone bankrupt a long time ago. But it's important to remember that America has like $36 trillion in deficit, and the people who have to ultimately pay for it are their voters. And like Mega 1.0 specifically, like I think that's their whole point is they don't want to pay for these commitments anymore, and they don't want America to play the role they've been playing in the world. Now that's like I'm just being sympathetic to MAGA. I think Canada is being treated very badly, but I'm being sympathetic to the MAGA crowd and why they believe what they believe. I think that he is going to be successful at ultimately getting concessions at a place like Canada, Mexico, and Europe. Um, is he serious about 25% tariffs across the board on all car parts and all cars coming from Canada and Mexico? No, I don't think he is because I've seen him pull back on this every like 2 weeks or so. And I think that even Canadian politicians are starting to call his bluff. And I think this is a standard operating procedure for Trump. I think he just acts this way. When his like strategy starts to get like diminishing marginal returns, he typically like backs off and moves on to the next thing. And I think we're at that phase of this tariff fight. I think like April 2nd is going to be like the by the news event. I think that like the worst news is already kind of priced in. Like I think mega style, like Trump style, is all about provocation. Like he's basically about getting your opponent annoyed, getting them emotional, and getting your opponent off balance, and that gives him like power to like manipulate the situation. It's very much an art of the deal the type strategy that Trump's going for. And I think that ultimately that's what's going on right now. I don't think that like companies like General Motors with 50% of their like operating capacity outside of the United States could even survive a month with tariffs at 25%. So I don't think he's being serious about across the board tariffs at 25% on parts and cars because it doesn't make any sense economically. And I don't think Trump's that stupid economically that he believes that America is gonna suddenly onshore all these jobs in like a year. It's gonna take like 2 decades to onshore half these jobs. And I think he knows that. I think that Trump likes to get announcements like we're going to invest $50 billion in the U.S. economy, and I don't think he's got an adequate announcements for the U.S. automakers. That's like one aspect of this. The other thing I've seen online, and I've been kind of trying to follow the story. Like apparently Canadian cars are still exempt from a lot of these tariffs because like, and that Trump didn't really communicate that at his press conference yesterday. But apparently a lot of Canadian cars are still going to be able to enter tariff free, or they're going to be able to enter in a way that like if 25% of their parts are Canadian, they'll only get like a portion of the car will be tariffed. So I don't totally understand what's going to happen here, but I don't believe Trump is going to put this level of tariff on vehicles, and I think it's just the typical Trump art of the deal type thing. But I actually think if you look at how the market reacted today, they kind of called his bluff. I think the market kind of knows that Trump's not going to go this extreme with it, and the market understands that Trump can't onshore all the jobs in any short period of time. So that's basically where I stand on that. I don't think that having Trump derangement syndrome and Mark Carney coming out and saying Canada is no longer friends, no longer has a good relationship with America is a good way of handling this. I don't think that putting 25% tariffs on U.S. cars is a good idea. I think it would decimate our economy. I think we're bluffing too. So that's kind of where I see it happening. We're both bluffing. We're both hoping that the U.S. auto lobby gets scared and convinces Trump not to do this. That's kind of like where I see things going. On the whole Starlink and Elon derangement syndrome, again, I've already said last week, like this was a very bad strategy for the Democrats to go through with in the 2024 election. It is the reason why, it's one of the fundamental reasons why they lost. I don't think Canadian politicians should use this strategy. I don't think it's going to work well. And I think that, yeah, I think for Starlink, I think our company should use the best products. I don't think we should be not using a nationalized Telestat, which is a shitty product in the first place. I think we should be using a good product, and I think Canadian companies should be using good products, and that's basically what it comes down to. I'm kind of a purist there. I don't think there's any reason to politicize WestJet's choice on internet providers.
Yeah, and I really hope that WestJet doesn't cave to the pressure of the people that are screaming at them, because like it seems kind of crazy to me that people are protesting against having good in-flight internet access. Like it's not that long ago that I thought in-flight internet access was like a miracle, right? That it can be done in the first place. And then it was like a further miracle, a second miracle that uh, I think Air Canada is they're able to offer in-flight texting for free, so you can use the stuff like Facebook Messenger without images, and that's absolutely free now. On if you have an Aeroplan membership and if you're on an Air Canada flight, and you know there's only going to be more and more developments where maybe eventually you'll have a free tier of full internet access, and things like Starlink is taking a big step towards that goal. And even if you had to pay, if they can get the cost down to be like if you had to pay like $10 and it's a long flight, then maybe it's worth it. So yeah, and it just like people are protesting against that where like having internet access on a flight is something that's like crazy to me that I still can't fully get used to, even though I've taken several Air Canada flights in the recent years where they have the free texting thing. But yeah, it's the Elon derangement syndrome has gone pretty bad in Canada, and it's also the fact that like nobody can actually name like one valid reason why they hate Elon. Besides Elon supports Trump, but like even that is like a wishy-washy kind of like a unclear reason, because it's like what does it mean to support Trump, and like what policy does he like support? Because I haven't heard of Elon really talk about tariffing Canada or any of that. So obviously he's broadly pro-Trump, but he hasn't really said anything against Canada in particular, at least as far as I've seen. So it's like you're protesting him because he supports Trump. Well, like a lot of people support Trump, and they can't like really point to one specific thing that Elon did. Not even one example of why specifically they don't like Elon or his stance on that particular topic. I don't know. Like, am I like off base here, or do you think that like it's just pure Elon derangement? Like, I can't find a valid
Yeah.
reason why we should hate him.
I mean, I guess like the whole like him liking Trump is gonna get people more emotional than I mean, they're always emotional and upset about Elon, and there's an NPC factor, the non-player character idea, where like people just like do what the media believes what the media tells them to believe, and the media is saying Elon bad, okay, Elon bad. That has always been an aspect of Elon derangement syndrome. But like the Trump thing is a little bit more emotional because like Canada is being targeted by Trump. He is bullying us. He's treating us like crap. He's not treating us fairly, and then Elon gets associated with him. So the NPC thing kind of goes over to that side. I just don't think it's very rational because I just don't think it's going to be something that serves Canada well. Like being enemies with Elon Musk, this it's not a good idea. Like this guy can potentially like put like battery factories in our country one day, but we're like let's just like be a little bit more strategic about which businessman we decide to be enemies with. I know that anybody who's associated with Trump is a Nazi to some people, but like we got to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more strategic about this because like our economy's like already kind of crappy, and like it would be nice to get like Silicon Valley people to invest in our economy, especially Elon Musk. And
Yeah,
he's Canadian. He's Canadian. I just want to point that out. He has Canadian citizenship. He like kind of cares about this country a little bit, maybe just a little.
yeah, and he went to Queens, right? And yeah, people are forgetting that Tesla employs a lot of Canadians too. So it's it's like, yeah, sure, you can push. People don't like him because he's a billionaire, but again, there's a lot of billionaires in this world, and some of them so happen to be pro-Trump, like Elon, but he's not the only pro-Trump billionaire out there. Just saying, right? Tristan, your thoughts on this whole thing?
I think that actually putting 25% tariffs on cars not made in the US, aka on putting it on the parts, etc., that is a great recipe to just make Americans pay a ton of money for their cars now, because the parts just cross the border like a million times. I'm exaggerating, but I think it's like 6 is the official number. And when something's being tariffed 6 times at 25% each time, that adds up rapidly. So I think that, and the simple fact of the matter is that the factories cannot move to America that quickly. It's not possible. It's not, you're not going to turn around and have a GM factory that's in Ontario move to America in the next like couple years. It's just full stop not going to happen. They don't have time. They have too many processes set up the way they're currently set up. You give them 5-10 years, yeah, they could move back to America. You give them the current rate of you basically you do it for a Trump term, they're not going to do it because it's just not it's not viable to, like, they might, a future factory they might build in the States, but it's not viable to move your current production into the States because you're just going to you're not going to have time. So you need those generating revenue to pay for the to generate profit for the company, right? Like they just can't. So Americans will just pay more for their cars if Trump actually puts us in, which means, to me, I think it's likely that he's just going to cancel it at some point, or if he keep it for a short term, if anything, just to show the car companies that he means business. I think that's kind of more so what I'm thinking. So I don't really think this is viable as a long-term solution because, as I've said, the tariffs will end up hurting Americans more than anyone else. It might hurt us a bit from it might hurt us a bit, but it's not going to hurt us sufficiently, because at the end of the day, this is kind of similar to the oil perspective. It's like, what are we gonna do? They're like, we send our oil to the States. That's it. There is no alternative. And our car parts, we send them through the supply chain, has them going all the way through NAFTA. So they're not going to be able to change on a dime. There's just no way. So at the end of the day, it's just I'm hoping that it's just posturing, because if it's not just posturing, I mean, buy your cars now if you're American. Here, Zillennial, if you want to speak before I go into the Starlink.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want to cut you off, but I just wanted to comment on your thing about where you said you said he means business. I actually think this is a situation where the auto lobby won. Like Trump lost this round. Like he didn't win. Like the auto lobby is not going to have to move any of their factories. He lost this round. This is actually going to. It's not going to really impact his poll numbers, but this is a bit of a blunder for Trump. The auto lobby showed him that they won, and he had kind of threw a hissy fit yesterday, and the market didn't react the way he thought it would.
Yeah, that's a good point on the auto lobby. Also, like the auto lobby is not gonna let him keep this in long term. If they have any sense, like they're gonna like, because at the end of the day, like the auto companies are the ones who are going to lose, in addition to the American consumer who's buying the car. It's also going to be auto company that's now selling less cars because American consumers are going, cars are more expensive, I can no longer afford a car. I'll buy a used car, or I'll buy something else, right? I'll buy a different car that costs less money because it didn't get tariffed 18 times crossing the border. And so the auto companies have a very vested interest in getting Trump to back down on this one, which I think that likely is going to be what occurs. And then with regards to Starlink on WestJet, yeah, I kind of agree with the perspective of like, do you guys not want good internet on your plane? Like, I understand that, yeah, a lot of people don't like Elon. And, you know, I'm not Elon's biggest fan in the world either, but like, you can't deny that Starlink is a good product. It gets the job done. It works well, and it will be better for people to have it on airplanes than to not have it on airplanes, from my perspective. Right. So, you know, you can go, I'm not going to fly with you, WestJet, until you cancel Starlink, all you want. Except for the part where you realize there's not that many airlines in Canada, right? Your options are Air Canada, Flair, and WestJet, basically. I guess Porter's kind of there too, but like those are the three real ones that are consistently flying. And let me just say this: WestJet is the middle one, the line one. They've got some budget stuff, they got some expensive stuff. So if you don't want to fly on Flair, where they cancel your flight periodically just because it's Tuesday and they feel like it, and you don't want to fly on Air Canada because, you know, you have bills to pay, you know, and you haven't won the lottery recently, so you don't want to pay twice the price to just get a drink on in-flight and in-flight entertainment. You can go with WestJet, where, you know, maybe you don't get a drink, but, you know, your flight hopefully won't get canceled either. So I think that, and I mean, heck, now you'll get internet maybe for a reasonable price. I just feel like this is I feel like it's pretty extra from my perspective. Like they're like, it's not going to move the needle at all. Like, not at all. Elon's not going to be like, oh my gosh, WestJet canceled their contract. What am I going to do? I can't pay the bills this month. Like, you know, this is literally a rounding error. I mean, I don't know how much the contract is for, but I am confident that it is a rounding error in the grand scheme of, you know, Tesla and that conglomerate's. Is Starlink part of Tesla? I'm assuming it is.
Part of SpaceX.
SpaceX.
Okay. Well, it's all part of the same kind of Elon-owned perspective. Again, I'm pretty sure it's probably a rounding error in that grand scheme of things there. So just like, no one is going to notice if WestJet cancels his contract, and you will have lost your in-flight entertainment for nothing. Or in-flight, maybe not in-flight entertainment, your in-flight Wi-Fi for nothing. Congratulations. You've both won and lost at the same time. This is the pinnacle of a Pyrrhic victory. You have won, but at what cost? So I just think this is very much a battle that's not worth fighting.
Yeah, I mean, you just described Doug Ford's response to providing internet for people in Northern Ontario, where it was supposed to be Starlink, but then, you know, he decided to go on this like anti-Elon rant and be like, "Oh, I ripped up this Starlink contract." So like, I don't know. I don't live in like northern Ontario, although I'm like pretty up north compared to a lot of other people. It's still southern Ontario, so I don't know how the northern Ontarians are like. But if I was living in northern Ontario, I would be sitting in my living room watching cable news because I don't have internet, and then I will watch the press conference where Doug Ford's like, "We've canceled the Starlink contract," and then I'll be like, so what about my internet? So you just not have internet, I guess now, right?
I mean, if you're from Northern Ontario and you want high speed internet that you can't have access to, just go to Costco and buy a Starlink and just like pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like that'll have to be the solution, right? But like the government was supposed to like subsidize this and like make it cheap for people, because I mean Starlink is still more expensive relatively speaking compared to other options. But if you're in northern Ontario, you don't have other options, so it's going to cost you a lot more than people living in southern Ontario, which was why they launched the program to provide Starlink to the northern Ontarians in the first place, right?
Did they offer any alternative to like as like an alternative company to Starlink? Like, well, I'm sure there's competitors.
Well, there's another one called Telesat, but it's not as good. And also, Telesat is not owned by Elon, but is owned by or at least a large proportion of their shareholders is another American company. So
it's also more expensive.
Yeah, it's more expensive.
They rely on Elon to get their satellites to space. So it's like Starlink is the way to go. Like it's just, unfortunately, that's the way to go. I'm sorry Canada lost this corporate battle, but
yeah, full disclosure, I did not vote for Doug Ford because in the past election that just happened, just because I think he's a disaster. Even though I'm more conservative leaning these days, Doug Ford is not like a real conservative in my opinion. So like, and when I tell people that, like, oh, I didn't vote for Doug Ford, people are like, oh, you're a progressive now. I was like, no, actually, I think Doug Ford is like a fake conservative, and he's not conservative enough, in my opinion. So, which is why I guess he like won a big majority, because he's like, right in the middle. People who don't watch politics think he's a conservative, so they vote for him. And then this is the kind of the stuff that he pulls, right, where it's all very performative. You like rip up a contract just because Starlink is owned by Elon, and we don't like Elon, and then all the people that you're supposed to be actually helping are just kind of like left hung out to dry. So that's the state of Ontario for you, and we're stuck with Doug Ford for another 4 years at least.
Yeah, he's a total clown. I for the first time did the Bitcoiner thing, and I decided not to participate in the election. I didn't vote for anyone. But yeah, Doug Ford's a total clown. He's pure performative, and he has no substance.
That might be the only thing that you and the modern progressive left here in Canada can agree upon. It's like hate for Doug Ford.